Hello. We're live.
Good morning. This is the Dynasty Playbook podcast, the Dynasty Fantasy Football subreddit dedicated podcast. I'm your host, Drew. You might know me by my Reddit sub handle, EAF_Marine. You can also find me on Twitter at Drew Dotson NFL. I also have my co-host, David. He's on Reddit, mtux96, and you can also find him on Twitter at DynastyDaveII. So this is our inaugural podcast. We're probably going to be terrible, but we'll get better with time. So hang around. We decided to do this to kind of offer something new to the community, bring something more to the subreddit, more than just, hey, should I trade this player for this player, or should I drop this player for this player? We want to discuss player values. We want to discuss, developing situations, players that, we believe in their talent, that, they may not have a situation that's good now, but that with the right situation they could thrive. So we're just here to help make your teams better and to maybe provide a little entertainment. So Dave, you got anything you want to say?
I think that's pretty much the key. I mean, we want to add more than just a wall of text. I mean, a lot of people just see a subreddit, a wall of text. We just want to add a little bit more to that, and hopefully people could grasp something from this webcast. Unfortunately, we weren't able to start at the beginning of the year, but hey, it's week 7 now? So it's
Week 7.
Week 7, you're probably looking at, okay, is my team ready for a playoff run or not? So I think we could add some value in there. I think right now we're going to start with the year in review so far because it's been a pretty interesting year in terms of fantasy as well. You have the whole Ray Rice and the Adrian Peterson debacle there, so I think we might want to touch a little bit on that and go with the injuries and some current trades that we might have. So depends on what you want to talk about first.
We might as well just start off with the hoodlums. We got Ray Rice, beating his wife in an elevator. Currently a free agent, even if he does, get his whole arbitration done and have this lifetime suspension lifted. I mean, yeah, maybe a team will take a chance on him and sign him, but I don't want him on my team. I don't care.
Yeah, as far as Ray Rice, I think his career's done. I mean, he really didn't even show anything last year. I really had high hopes for him this year, but unfortunately the domestic violence issue came up with him, and I don't see any team logical gonna try to pick him up. I know the whole Vic, the Eagles gave him a shot, but then again, you're looking at dog fighting as opposed to beating women, and I don't think at this day of age, I don't think anyone's going to try to pick him up because then you can have these groups just protesting the team, and I don't think any team wants that headache right now. Adrian Peterson.
I think it's also it's difficult to draw a comparison to Vic because Vic also did prison time. He really paid for his crime, whereas Ray Rice didn't even get sentenced. They have no reason to think he might have rehabilitated himself. His initial reaction was rat out the Ravens organization and try and make himself look not as bad. So I think a lot of people, a lot of organizations are going to be turned off by that. Whereas Vic consciously made an effort to show that he felt he was wrong for what he did and that he was trying to better himself. So I think it's kind of hard to draw comparisons to the two. But yeah. Regardless, moving on.
Yeah, I think that is the key there because, of course, you had Vic who served his time in prison, and people are like, okay, he could rehabilitate, but with the Ray Rice situation, the DA in Atlantic City really screwed that up. But I think we can move on from there.
Yeah.
And you have the Adrian Peterson side, which I'm not sure where he's going to be next year. I don't think the Vikings are moving on with him next year. I think he might find a place somewhere else. That's if the court situation gets settled as well. And that's still a question mark right there. right now I probably wouldn't really want either on my team right now.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, I just this past couple weeks I participated in one of Ryan McDowell's mid-season ADP mocks, and Adrian Peterson went from being a second-round startup pick to almost outside of the top 100, and I think even that's too high for him. I don't see a future for him in the NFL, especially not with the Vikings. He's getting paid entirely too much money for them to want to keep him around. And they're gonna cut bait with him at the end of the year. I'd be willing to bet. A similar situation, not a similar situation, but another situation where players, their values being affected by what they've done off the field is Greg Hardy, who's an individual defensive player. He's a defensive end for the Panthers. For those of you that play team defense, you can mute us for a couple minutes. You can come back later. But Greg Hardy's also on the exempt list. He's right now on a franchise tag with the Panthers, and even if he beats all the charges, he can go to another team. But I don't see him back in Carolina next year.
I think with the Harding, I think it really depends on how the court case goes. I mean, yeah, he got that conviction, but then again, that's really just a bench trial, which, according to some people and where he was at, it's just a matter of just basically nothing really. He still has to go to the trial of peers, which he is eventually, probably at the end of the year. And I think he's a wait see until what happens in there. Of course, if he gets convicted there, then I think he's done with Carolina, and any other team might have that little thing where they don't want to pick him up, no matter how good he is.
Right, and their statements about the North Carolina court system is pretty much on the money. I was stationed there for 4 years, and it's a pretty sketchy court system. They tend to, I mean, it's one of those states where if there's domestic violence, it's immediately just without any evidence, they're going to immediately attack the male in the case, and he has to go through a lot to prove whether something happened or not. I'm not defending Greg Hardy. He could be a complete piece of shit for all we know. I'm not going to speak for him, but there's also the chance that he's completely in the clear. So we will just have to see how that plays out. If he does get cleared and go somewhere else, he could have value somewhere else. But until then, I have no interest in having him on my team. He's too much of a liability.
Yeah, and a lot of times you don't have the space for him. Now, if you have the space for him, I might make the room. But right now, in a lot of my leagues, I don't have the roster space for anyone to sit the bench because I already have enough prospects sitting on the bench myself. But as far as now, I think we can move on from that. And was there any key injuries that you see other than Victor Cruz out there? Because I think Victor Cruz, we're going to discuss that a little bit later on. Was there any other key injuries that we've had so far in the first few weeks that you know of?
A big one to me was Stephen Ridley. I've been a big Ridley believer even since he's been coming out of LSU. I'm a down south boy. I've been rooting for LSU since I could talk. But I think Ridley was, this was his chance to prove himself and go get a big contract going into free agency because this is the last year of his contract. I think he is still going to get the chance to go somewhere and start, but I think without the money, with getting a smaller contract, he's not going to be guaranteed a starting position, whereas if he was making a bigger contract, they'd feel more inclined to force the start, kind of like Trent Richardson's having in Indianapolis. I still think Ridley's talented enough to where he's gonna prove fantasy relevant wherever he goes next. Somewhere like Atlanta. Who knows? Maybe the Chargers next year if Ryan Matthews doesn't re-sign. He could still prove a good value going forward. And if you don't own him, I'd see what the Ridley owner wants for him. See if you can't pick him up, stash him on your IR, and see what his value does with free agency. Are there any other injuries you can think of?
Not offhand, but basically I think you pretty much with Ridley, I think you were right on point on that. Ridley wasn't really a running back I was targeting this year, mainly because I don't like the Patriots' backfield at all. So I kind of avoided them to begin with. Now, Ridley going to another team next year, I think that really would make me think, okay, I need to get Ridley on my squad. I think right now is probably a good time to buy him low and see what other owners do want for him. Now, will I trade a high draft pick? It depends on where I'm at this year. If I'm like a high draft pick, I probably wouldn't. I'd probably look at maybe trading a second or a third round only, but that's just me. I kind of like my first round draft picks.
Yeah, I agree. Besides maybe a team that they think they're legitimately going to win, they're going to have the 112 pick. I can't see trading a first round for them, but I think easily any pick that's in the second round, I would trade for Stephen Ridley at this point. But yeah, I mean, playing in Belichick's system and being benched for any fumble has made people think that Ridley has this terrible case of fumbles when statistically he fumbles no more than the average running back does, and I think that's gonna show itself when he's playing somewhere else. I'm trying to think if any other key players are on IR. Sam Bradford.
Of course, that's the obvious one. I kind of thought he was going to have a big year, but then, of course, he tore his ACL, so I think he's done, especially with Austin Davis picking it up in St. Louis right there, which I guess you're going to talk about later on as well.
Oh, boy.
I think right now we can move on from injuries and basically move on to the big trade of the week, which was Percy Harvin to the Jets from the Seahawks. I think that probably does increase Harvin's value for whatever that's worth. Harvin wasn't producing in Seahawks. Of course, he wasn't getting the ball in Seahawks. I mean, I know the first few weeks they were running a lot of jet sweeps. A lot of those were fakes. Sometimes you did get the ball, but I don't think the Seahawks were utilizing him like the Vikings were. Although I'm not really quite sure he's going to do anything on the Jets either. But I'm kind of holding off and seeing what he does on the Jets this week.
Yeah, I saw that Harvin trade, and I still don't know what to think about it. I have a strong I think the players this is going to positively affect: Doug Baldwin and Jermaine Kearse. I've been kind of a fan of Kearse's talent. He's not an ascendant talent or anything, but he's shown the ability to make plays consistently, and I think that this is going to give him the opportunity to be a starter. And if he's sitting on your waiver wire, stash him. Rotate that last roster spot and see what plays out. Baldwin, if you don't already own him, it's too late. You're not. Whatever the owners going to want too much for him. Because they're going to wait and see how this plays out for him. As for the Jets, I want to say this is probably going to positively affect Decker. It's going to draw some coverage away from him. It's going to provide more attention drawn away than just Chase Amaro would and whatever nameless receivers are playing behind him, Curly and all those guys. But I think for Geno Smith, this probably increases his value just a little bit. But outside of, even in 2 QB leagues, he's still bottom of the barrel player. He's down there with Kyle Orton in terms of guys I have any interest in owning. But what do you think this does for players besides Harvin between the Seahawks and the Jets?
I think you're right. I mean, Geno's value might go up, but I really don't think he's going to be the player I want to own. Harvin's probably the Jets I would want to own, and that's kind of a cautionary thing. I don't really see how he's going to fit in yet. I like to see how he fits in. Of course, that's going to if he
All right, I might be here alone right now. Scott, if you're listening, go ahead and drop me a quick little message in the league chat so I know that I'm not losing everything right now because everything's looking crazy on my end. You back, bud?
Yeah, sorry, kind of lost connection there.
Okay, I was making sure that it wasn't all losing it on my end.
No, that was just my side. But anyways, like I was saying, I mean, Geno Smith, yeah, that's going to increase his value a little bit, but he's still not an owner player. There's plenty of other QBs out there that I'd rather own. Harvin, I'd want to wait and see. I mean, if you get him cheap, great. Although a lot of people are going to try to sell him high, say, oh, I want this, I want this, I want this. I probably have better wide receivers at the moment other than him. Now, what do you feel about Paul Richardson in Seattle? How is that going to affect him, considering Harvin's not there anymore?
Well, honestly, I didn't like Paul Richardson going into the draft. I think he's nothing more than a deep threat, and I think as fantasy has shown us time and time again, a pure deep threat is not a viable fantasy option. But I could be proven wrong. I mean, Pete Carroll tends to know more about football than I do, so. But Paul Richardson, if you can stash him. But I'm not going out of my way to go get him. I didn't draft him in any league I'm in. It would have taken a 4th-round pick for me to get him in this draft, and there was no way that was happening. So I'm admittedly quite low on Paul Richardson, and I don't think this changes my opinion on him.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I mean, yeah, if you have the room, I would probably try to make room for him. I wouldn't really go out and trade him, but if he's sitting on your waiver wire, I might just pick him up and stash him, just in case, and see how the next couple weeks go, and see how he fits into Seattle's playbook.
100%. If you can pick him up off your waiver wire and stash him, do it, because that's just a chance for opportunity to turn into value. Even if I'm not a fan of his talent, on the off chance that it does play out, that's going to be a windfall of value for you. Whereas if you don't pick him up, you're letting some other guy on your team pick up on that value, and you're sitting there just twiddling your thumbs. But I think we've talked about Harvin enough, considering I don't like Harvin all that much anyways, because he burned me on a trade this year. And I think we can go into our player discussions for the week.
Yeah, I think I'm already there too. Pretty much, I picked out a couple players I want to talk about. I want to talk about Le'Veon Bell. I was high on him. I picked him up last year. A lot of people are no, he's not going to do good. He's not going to do good. He's not going to do good. Look what's happening right now. In my league, he is the number 3 running back in my league right now, behind DeMarco Murray, and also I forget who was number 2, but Matt Forte. But right now, I think he is consistent. He's been a consistent double-digit player for me. Of course, the one thing that I don't like right now is what everyone was worried about was the touchdowns. Right now, he only has 1 touchdown on the year, which is not that great. His one saving grace has been his yardage, though, which has been gaining points. And that's what you really want with your running back, is gaining points. Whether it be the yards or touchdown, doesn't really matter. Yes, I would love for him to get in the end zone more and more. That would be more points for me. But unfortunately, that's not happening right now in the Steelers, because they're not scoring a lot of touchdowns to begin with.
Honestly, I think it's insane that he's the number 3 scoring running back, and he only has 1 touchdown. I think that speaks volumes to how well he's doing this year. Another point is yards consistently show that season by season they tend to roll over, and they tend to be more consistent year to year than touchdowns are. Like you said, you were extremely high on Le'Veon Bell. There were a lot of people who was low on him. I was one of those people. I did not believe in Le'Veon Bell at all. I looked at his yards per carry. I looked at him as a volume runner, and I was just not high on him at all. And I will admit it, I was wrong. I was so wrong. He has looked explosive. He has just looked like the man out there. And I went through, I redid my rankings, and Le'Veon Bell is my number one dynasty running back right now over Shady. He's got 3 years on Shady, and he's putting up numbers like Shady should be putting up. I see no reason for him not to be the number one dynasty running back right now. And I didn't own any shares of him going into this year, and I made a huge blockbuster trade to get him this year because I needed him on one of my teams. I had to have him just because I had to get on that train before it was too late.
That's exactly what it is.
He has been an absolute stud, and the touchdowns are going to come, plain and simple. It's just like to 2012 Calvin Johnson. That was the year he almost set the receiving. No, that's the year he did set the receiving yardage record. Only had 5 touchdowns.
Yeah.
The touchdowns will come.
As long as the Steelers are feeding Bell the ball, he's going to be a great asset. Whether he scores touchdowns or not, yeah, I'd love to see him score touchdowns. And hopefully in the coming weeks against Houston and Colts, I hope that maybe they will add a few touchdowns to his thing. You mentioned Shady, of course, McCoy. He's been a disappointment, but right now I think I want to talk about another disappointment in Cordell Patterson. I mean, what the heck's going on in the Vikings land there? Everyone was so high on him this year. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, I passed up a few trade offers myself on him, which I probably should have, considering that the person who wanted me trade was a huge Vikings fan. I think I should have did that, but that's here and there. But the thing is, I could still trade him for something. I mean, do you feel that he is tradable now?
Yeah, we better watch talking about Patterson. Barless might get a little bit upset. That's his boy. But I completely agree. He's been a huge disappointment. But I think we might have just been a year early to the party with him. I think if you were high on him going into this season, don't sell low. Hold on to him. Hold on until next year. Let him refine his route running, because that's his biggest issue. Is he is a sloppy route runner. If you don't believe in him and you were just holding him because you thought he was a value, see what you can get. See if there's going to be somebody in every league that still believes in Patterson's talent. You could still get good value for him. But if you're one of those guys, and most likely you are if you're the guy that owns him, because you probably were the one that was willing to take him high enough to get him. Hold him and let it play out, because in a year you're not going to be happy with what you got compared to what he's worth then. I think his athleticism is gonna shine once his skills get refined. We knew he was a raw prospect coming out, and it just hasn't refined itself yet. There's a reason it's called the 3-year rule for wide receivers, and that's been broken recently. But let's assume that's what the rule is going to be for him.
Yeah, I think that is key. I mean, wide receivers, yeah, 3 year, but I know it's been broken as well. I mean, Gordon produced big time in his second year. Unfortunately, he's sitting suspended right now. But I think if you could trade him big, I'd probably trade Patterson big. I know the league I do own him in. I have a huge Vikings fan who really wants him. I could probably get more than what he's actually worth going into next year. I'd probably wait until next year to actually sell him, maybe before the draft, and see if I can get like some high draft picks. If I can't get what I want, I'm probably going to hold on to him, like you said. I think the other surprise this year has been DeMarco Murray so far. I held it off. I'm like injury. But then again, Matthew last year proved that, okay, you can have the biggest injury label on you and still produce something, miraculously not having injury. Right now, DeMarco Murray in my league is the number 1. I don't know about another league, but I play in a 0.5 PPR league. I think maybe I was wrong about Murray, and I probably should have picked him up. I'm not sure if the owner right now wants to own. My league is kind of specific because everyone overvalues running backs for a good reason, because there's really not a lot of running backs available. But I think DeMarco Murray was a surprise for me this year.
Yeah, I think it was a surprise for all of us. I had one share of DeMarco Murray going into this offseason. It was on an orphan team I took over, and I sold him way, way cheaper. Like, even before the season started, I was upset with what I sold him for, just because I was ready to, shake some things up on that team and get it looking the way I wanted to do it. And I sometimes you can't predict stuff like that. So yeah, I feel bad about it, but you win and you lose on some trades. But DeMarco Murray he's looked ridiculously good, and the Cowboys are going to run him into the ground. My advice to you, if you own Murray and you don't think you're making a run for the championship, sell him, because his value is never going to be higher. Plain and simple. You can get whatever you want for DeMarco Murray right now, and they're going to run him into the ground. They're going to just load him down with carries, and I think Arian Foster has showed us that your body cannot hold up to that. You eventually break down. Ray Rice showed us that too before he decided to be a hoodlum. But back when he was a productive back and he was getting 300 plus carries a year, his body broke down. He became a less successful back. You don't want to own Arian Foster now compared to what he used to be worth. You wish you would have sold him.
Yeah, you should have sold Foster last year probably. But anyways, let's move on. What players would you want to focus on? What players are you really looking at, or are big disappointments to you?
Well, I got a couple of guys. First of all, your lower third disappeared. Just figured I'd let you know.
What was that?
Your lower third disappeared.
Oh, did it? Okay, let me fix that.
Scott told me that. But the first guy I wanted to talk about was Austin Davis, who is a Southern Miss alum. That's my Golden Eagles. I was on this guy's trail week one once he got in the game. I was ready to put him on my team. I was waiting for him to get his chance since he came out as an undrafted free agent, and he's doing the things that made Southern Miss successful when he was here. He's a very cerebral player. He's plays very aware of his surroundings, regardless of his size. My biggest thing with Davis is even when he was getting pressure constantly put on him in the game last week, he was still making the downfield throws. He only got sacked one time last game, and I think Austin Davis should be owned in every league at this point. Even in your 1 QB leagues, I think he's a worthwhile backup to hold. And your 2 QB leagues, there's no reason he shouldn't be owned. He's a legit every week starter in a 2 QB or super flex league, and he's young. He's got a lot of tread left on the tires, and I think that for those teams that that are rocking the Tom Brady's and the Peyton Mannings and the Drew Breeses, you wanted to get Nick Foles before he hit big. Austin Davis is that same thing. I think you want to grab him before he gets big.
I think I missed the boat myself on Austin Davis. I think what he's been producing, I think you do want to own him going forward. I really don't think Bradford's going to be Rams next year. I think this is Austin Davis's job going forward. And if you can get Austin Davis cheap from people not knowing about him, grab him. Grab him while you can before the price goes higher and higher and higher.
Yep, the hype's not there yet, so get it before it starts getting hot like it did with Foles. Foles had that terrible game last year where he threw, I want to say it was 3 interceptions, had no touchdowns, looked through 97 yards. A lot of people dropped him. You could have got him for pennies, and this is your opportunity like that this year. After this game, go out and get Austin Davis if you can get him. Another guy I want to bring up that's been severely underrated this year is Keenan Allen. I was a huge Keenan Allen fan coming into the draft. He was one of my higher ranked wide receivers going into the draft. I think if he hadn't had that leg injury, he would have been right up there with Austin and Hopkins coming out. And I think he's getting a lot of unnecessary flack for his lack of production, considering he's still being utilized in the offense. Keenan Allen's had 28 receptions this year, which is the highest amount of receptions out of any tight end, wide receiver, running back on the team. The reason he's not getting you value like he got you last year is he has had 0 receptions. Just like we said with Le'Veon Bell, he's getting the work, he's getting the targets, he's getting the receptions. The touchdowns will come. Keenan Allen is going, you can get him for a lot cheaper than you could at the beginning of the year. If you believe in Keenan Allen's talent at all, you need to go out and see what the owner wants for him, because I bet you can get him a lot cheaper than you think you can. Get him on your team because his value is going to go right back up. He is a young wide receiver playing with one of the best performing quarterbacks in the league right now, and I think that they're forming a very strong relationship right now.
I think next year, I think his value is going to be even higher because right now he's not getting touchdowns because he has players like Floyd still there. He has other players kind of stealing his touchdown passes. I think going into next year, I think going into next year, I think his targets in that red zone will increase. His value will increase. I mean, he started slow this year, but now, like you said, he's getting the receptions now. He's getting them. It's only going to be time before he actually reaches the end zone. I think now you probably do want to try to get Keenan Allen before he does explode on the scene this year, and then going into next year.
I absolutely agree. One more guy I wanted to bring up was Shane Vereen. This is somebody I wrote down after the Ridley injury came out, and looks like I was right to write his name down. Vereen had a huge week on Thursday. Put 2 touchdowns, over 100 total yards from scrimmage. I think Vereen is going to be Belichick's guy as long as he stays healthy. I don't believe in James White's talent. I don't believe in Jonas Gray. I think Vereen is going to carry the rock there. He's going to see a lot of work in the passing game, and I think he's. It's obviously too late to buy him, but if you're competing, ride him to the championship. If you're not competing, sell high, because he's gonna pull in a pretty penny right now.
I think Vereen would have been a hard guy to pick up nonetheless. Now, like I said, I wasn't targeting because I really didn't like the situation with the Patriots. You never know with Belichick which hand he's going to run with and what his play is going to be each week. I think with the Ridley injury, I think that opens it up more for Vereen. You probably will see more consistent production from Vereen going forward. And if you can get him, then you get him. If not, I mean, I wouldn't spend too much because he's going to be worth a lot. I'm not sure if you really want to give up too much for him. But if you can get him for a price you want, get him. And it doesn't hurt to try to ask, okay, the Vereen owner, okay, how much you want for him?
Right, absolutely. And I think that kind of nails down our veteran players. Another, I guess, section of the show we're going to do. I can't think of the right word I'm looking for right now.
Rookie spotlight.
Exactly, the rookie spotlight portion of the show, where we're going to discuss a couple of rookies that we've got on our radar for this week that we're either buying or selling, or just that we want to talk about. So I guess we'll open it up with a player whose situation has changed drastically in the last week, and that's Odell Beckham Jr. With Victor Cruz's injury, this thrusts Odell Beckham Jr. into the starting job. That's killer for his value.
Now, Odell Beckham Jr. was actually a wide receiver I was kind of targeting. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get him because people did draft him ahead of me. But I was always high on him. A lot of people were. Although with the situation in the Giants, he kind of, with his injury at the beginning of the year, kind of had to work himself into the Giants situation. And, of course, with this Cruz injury, that kind of thrust him big time into the situation with the Giants. And the Giants will have to rely on him now since they don't have Cruz to throw to. And I think right now Odell Beckham is going to be a really good rookie to watch, and I think he will be able to do the production for you if you have him on your team.
Absolutely, and I think if you don't have him on your team, I think you need to go out and try and get him. I know that the Cruz injury has definitely bumped up his value a good bit. I think he's worth whatever you're going to pay for him right now. I think he's worth that plus. So I think you still need to go out there and try and get him because once he gets on the field, he starts producing. It's going to be well worth it.
I mean, that's the one player I would pay whatever I can to get him as well. I mean, I know a lot of times you don't want to pay too much, but Odell Beckham Jr., he's a rookie going into this league. You want to pay as much as you can to make sure he's on your squad.
Absolutely. I took down some stats between Victor Cruz and him. Victor Cruz, when he got injured, was actually leading the league in drops. He had, I want to say it was 7 drops. I'm pulling up the stat sheet right now. Yep. 7 drops. He was only catching 56% of his passes as well. Beckham has caught 67% of his passes at this point. So that tells me he's gonna, if he's getting targeted the same as Cruz was, which I'm fairly confident he will be, just because that's one less target with Cruz gone. That's one less target for Eli to throw to. Beckham's gonna put up just as good as numbers, if not better, than Cruz did. He's an explosive runner. He's got huge hands, so I don't think drops are going to be an issue. I remember reading somewhere, I don't think any receiver that's his size has ever come out with hands as big as his. And that's crazy to me.
Yeah.
Granted, I liked Beckham come out in the draft, but I was higher on a lot of other receivers, so I didn't end up getting him in a lot of drafts. I had him in one draft out of my 14 leagues, but I started making moves to get him in the first couple weeks of the season because I viewed it as a buy low opportunity, and that's paying off dividends. So I think that's a good lesson is, if there's a player you believe in his talent and for some reason his stock is low because of injury or, a bad situation like Trey Mason had going into the season, shop around, see what the owner wants for him, because you could probably get him for cheaper than what you could have got him for him when he came out.
Yeah. I think with this year, I mean, of course, probably a lot of people had a lot of other wide receivers ahead of them, mainly because there was a lot of wide receivers to choose from this year, which probably did put OBG down the line further, where you could have got him cheaper than what you would have if, say, he came out next year or last year. I think Odell Beckham Jr. is one person you want to grab in any league that you are in, if you could get if the owner actually wants to trade him for something.
Right. Another rookie that had a somewhat of a breakout game this week was running back that I was extremely high on this year was Trey Mason. He was my number 3 running back in this class after Isaiah Crowell and Carlos Hyde, and it looks like he's finally getting an opportunity in St. Louis, and it's actually happening earlier than I thought it would. He still has a lot of issues in his pass blocking, but he's also shown a lot of improvement from the preseason. I remember specifically one play from the game on Monday where the blitzer came straight through and Mason engaged him head on and just physically threw himself at the defender. He actually, he was willing to sacrifice his body to make that block. Whereas in the preseason, you watched him try to make those blocks. He kind of just let the defender roll around him. He didn't look like he wanted to even attempt to pass block. And I think the fact that he's making that progress is indicative that he's out there making the effort to improve and get on the field. The coaches are seeing that, and that's why he played. He's by far the most athletic and the most talented runner on the team. And I think with time, he's going to continue to see more and more snaps, more carries, and he's going to get that starting job eventually.
Yeah, that's the one thing you want to look out for these young runners. Because a lot of times coming into the NFL, they really don't do pass blocking that well as they should. And they're not going to get those plays because They want to make sure that their number one investment at the QB is protected. And one of the jobs of their running backs is to offer the pass protection when needed. I mean, we have those edge rushers coming in. They want to make sure the running back could actually stop them from tackling from the blind side or from the front or wherever. Now, if you get those young running backs learning how to pass block, then they're going to get more and more carries, which I think what you're saying about Trey Mason could be true, and he might actually grasp the concept now that, okay, I need to pass block and I can play. I need to pass block and I'm going to play, and that's what they're doing in the Rams right now is they're playing Trey Mason and they're putting him in there.
Absolutely. I think Mason is another of those that even though it may not seem like a buy low opportunity because he just had his quote unquote breakout game, I think it's still a buy low opportunity because he's going to be worth a lot more going forward. I think this is one of those times where you need to go out and you see what the owner wants for him and see if you can't pick him up. I own him in probably 75-80% of my leagues easily. Just because I was higher on him than most of the consensus. Granted, that cost me because I could have had players like Kelvin Benjamin that players were low on, but I was super low on him. That was my biggest miss of the whole offseason with Kelvin Benjamin. But hey, you win some, you lose some.
Yeah, I mean, Kelvin Benjamin myself, I kind of avoided because body catcher. What happens when you body catch? You drop a lot of balls, and of course,
so many drops.
Yeah. Body catchers drop. I mean, I've seen that as a Browns fan watching Braylon Edwards. Comes out of college, of course. He's like the number one prospect, and what happens? He catches the ball with his body a lot of drops. As you looked at Braylon Edwards' career, it's drops, with a few circus catches here and there. But I think that's why a lot of people did avoid Kelvin Benjamin.
Yep.
But he's the only target on the team, so that's why he's getting the target.
Avoided Kelvin Benjamin was the drops and his age. I think he was 24 coming out in this draft, and that's how old Brandon Cooks is going to be at the end of his first contract. Yeah. So in Dynasty, that's something you have to take into account. So granted, I did miss on what Kelvin Benjamin's initial value is. If I had got him at the 112, the 201, I could have traded him for. I probably could have got Devontae Adams or Jordan Matthews straight up for him at certain points in this season, and I mean that's crazy. I can't do that with Trey Mason right now, but I took Trey Mason over him.
Yeah. Well, let's look at the situation with Kelvin Benjamin right now. That could change next year. He might not get the targets if, say, a better wide receiver comes to that team. Because right now, you're looking at the team where he's basically the primary target, which if you actually get a more sure-handed wide receiver, his production might actually drop, which is not really a wide receiver you want to own, but right now, he's the hot hand right now. Which, of course, I could be proven wrong, and next year, he might be the hot hand next year, but that's one thing you want to worry about if you do own Kelvin Benjamin.
Right. I think, honestly, Kelvin Benjamin would have been a short-term buy for me. I would have bought him, and I would have sold him, because I thought this first year might have been productive for him. I would have never guessed it would have been this productive, but his catch percentage is still around 57. He's still dropping balls, but he's getting the volume to make him productive. The problem with the idea of Carolina bringing in a stud wide receiver next year is they don't have any cap room. Their cap is still being taken up by D'Angelo Williams and Jonathan Stewart, and they can't even cut them next year because cutting them will take up more cap space than keeping them. They're in such a terrible spot with their contracts that they got nowhere to go. So Benjamin might be the name there again next year.
Yeah. We'll have to see next year if they maybe draft another wide receiver, though.
Yeah.
But I think we'll move on to our final segment right now. I think we'll focus on the subreddit posts about the trade vetoes. I know that's one thing that you wanted to rant about. So I think we'll go ahead and rant about that. Of course, I'm probably going to agree with what you're going to say here. So you can go on your rant right now if you want.
All right. # rant warning. There was a post on the subreddit earlier this week about, I want to say the trade was straight up Cordarrelle Patterson for Justin Hunter. And a comment on that trade thread was, if I was in that league, I would have vetoed that trade. And it got to me because the whole idea of league mates vetoing trades bothers me. There's no point to it. There's only two reasons you would ever veto a trade. One is it's collusion. Two is you don't want the trade to go through because it improves another team more than you think it should. Either because it's an unfair trade or that team is already too strong and you don't want it to get stronger. Which is a bullshit reason to veto a trade. There is absolutely... It's not your job to manage their team and how strong they are. If they manage to make an unfair trade, good on them. They capitalized on some value. But let's even say those two players straight up. That owner could have just been insanely low on Cordarrelle Patterson and extremely high on Justin Hunter. And with each passing week, it's getting pretty easy to be low on Cordarrelle Patterson. So I just think, I mean, Dynasty, it's an impossible place to sit here and say that your evaluation and your valuation of a player is right and that someone else is wrong, and that because of how you value the player, that trade should be vetoed. The other reason is collusion. And even if you think an unfair trade is unfair because it's collusion, that's why you have a commissioner. The whole purpose of having a commissioner is to be able to moderate the league, make sure that nothing sketchy is happening. And I feel like your commissioner should be able to look at trade and say, that's collusion or that's not collusion. If he's questionable, then he can dig into it. He can find out. And if you can't trust your commissioner to do that, then why is he your commissioner? Why are you in that league? I don't know.
I know when it comes to trade veto, I am not a big fan of them at all. And like you said, the only reason why a trade should be vetoed is collusion. And at that point, it's not really an issue of vetoing the trade as much as it is to, okay, who's going to replace these teams?
Exactly.
The trade will be reversed. I'm in this one league. I am actually the league commissioner now, mainly because the old league commissioner kind of went on a crazy rampage and actually deleted the league. Mainly because his thought was, okay, this is my league. My league, my league. This is my league, and I want to run it the way I want. And these trades are making teams super big, teams super high, because everyone's trading peanuts for gold. And of course, there's a lot of questionable vetoes he's done. And one of them was actually, he's like, oh, I have to veto this trade because, you know, this team is getting so much value compared to what he's getting. And of course, what happened at the end of the year, which team actually won that trade would have been the team that he actually thought was getting the low end of the stick. In Dynasty and Fantasy Football, you can't really tell how trades are going to be. I mean, of course, the one team that was actually going to lose on the trade at the end of the year was glad that trade actually didn't go through and actually was vetoed. Of course, that commissioner's not here anymore because basically we wanted better. And basically, I'm not a big fan of vetoes, mainly because who am I to judge values? Like, exactly. Look what you said, Cordarrelle Patterson, Hunter. Cordarrelle Patterson's been a disappointment. People are going to get rid of him because they don't have faith that he's going to produce, because he's been a huge disappointment for them this year. Of course, they could be wrong, but who am I to say, okay, you're wrong?
Yep, I had a guy that was completely off the Cordarrelle Patterson bandwagon this year. I bought Cordarrelle Patterson from him for a mid-first round pick, which is right about where Justin Hunter's value is. So to say that trade's not fair, I mean, it's a completely reasonable situation to happen. But I think the bigger problem is why do you feel the need to manage someone else's team? Exactly. If you can veto trades, why not veto draft picks because you don't feel like they're getting good value?
Veto waivers.
Exactly. Say I pick Trey Mason at pick 202 because I really want Trey Mason. Well, you think I'm taking Trey Mason too high, and you're allowing the pick at 203 to get way better value. So you're going to veto my draft pick. Where does it stop? It's
you're starting Cam Newton over someone else. I'm like, I don't like Cam Newton. Why are you starting him? I'm going to veto your starting lineup right there.
Exactly. Worry about your own team. If you feel you need to veto a trade because it makes another team too strong, then you're not working hard enough to make your team strong enough to compete.
Yep.
If that team took advantage of that owner,
why didn't you make the trade first?
exactly. If you're mad that trade, if that owner took advantage of another owner on value, then you should have been sending out trade offers to that owner first. You should be sending out trade offers to everybody and seeing where you can gain value. It's not about taking advantage of players. It's about, getting value where you can, and sometimes you can get peak value. Sometimes
if someone's saying Megatron for Person Harving, why weren't you sending offers to the Megatron owner right now? Why weren't you sending these offers out first? Are you not trading? Are you not sending out offers? Send out offers. You're going to get those deals. You're not going to worry about what these teams are doing in their trades because, of course, if you're reading a trade, you're probably not making the trade offers to begin with.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. End rant. It drives me crazy when people say they. I've had countless arguments over it in the regular fantasy football subreddit, and I saw the comment so many times. I ended up unsubscribing because it's a
common thread. It's a common thread. Okay, why vetoes? And some people, well, it's to protect the status of the league. It's to protect the purity. It's like that's just BS. It's just because you want to veto because it's making one team stronger than others. Don't worry about what that team's doing. Worry about what your team is doing. Make your team the powerhouse. Don't rely on vetoing these single little itty trades because those teams are powerhouses because they've been doing the work. They've been making the trades. They've been making these little, what appears to be lopsided trades happen because they've been sending those offers out.
Exactly. And sometimes a trade is not going to look like good value because you can't always win a trade when it happens. Sometimes I'll go out and make a trade that, yeah, it looks like I lost that trade, but I'm thinking ahead. I'm planning ahead. I'm thinking, yeah, it's gonna look like I'm losing this trade right now, but in a year, that trade's gonna be a slam dunk for me. Sometimes you have to spend the value now so that you can win later. But there are so many dynasty owners that play for right now that thought can't occur to them, and
yeah,
it just seems like a strange way to manage a dynasty team when you're supposed to play for years. You're supposed to build a dynasty. And Scott says you need to look at your camera.
Who, mine?
Yeah.
Well, my connection dropped in a second, so.
Gotcha. Well, I don't think we really have anything else that we needed to cover.
Yeah, I think we're done here. Of course, tune in next week, and we'll hopefully have a better one next week, and hopefully Alex can join us next week.
Right. If you have any... Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. You're fine.
If you have any suggestions, any comments, questions, concerns, bitches, moans, complaints, stop over at the Dynasty Fantasy Football subreddit. Find the thread. Leave us some comments. Tell us what you like. Tell us what you didn't like. Tell us if you think my voice is annoying. Tell us if you think Alex needs to wear a mask, or if Dave needs to wear a mask next time. If you don't like looking at his face, just let us know how you feel. We want your input. We want to make this a better product for you going forward. In the future, we're also going to be looking at college prospects, so we will be giving you player breakdowns on them as well. But if you have content ideas, let us know. We want to make this better for y'all. But I think that's all we've got for today, Dave.
That'll be it. Have a great week and enjoy watching football.
This was the Dynasty Playbook, the Dynasty Fantasy Football subreddit podcast. I'm Drew at Drew Dodson NFL and EAF Marine.
And I'm David on Reddit. I'm mtux96. On Twitter, you can find me at Dynasty Dave II.